You know, we're starting on section 14, and we have 28 sections altogether in this unit. So we have 3 more sessions scheduled in order to try to complete this. So I don't know, but I'm thinking if we could kind of pick up our pace a little bit tonight, and we don't all have to make comments unless we have burning comments about every single section. But so I'd like, my goal, if we can do it, is to get through section 18. If we can get through 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, that would be fantastic, and we could be moving along. So they are long, but there's lots of space for writing left for in some of them, and they don't necessarily need that. So here's what I kind of think, if that will work. If we could start out maybe by reading. If you want to read, you read. And when we get to the first, question, the person who's reading at that time maybe takes a stab at it. If somebody has something to add, then we do that. But then we just move on. And then the next person reads, and then we take a stab at what the question is. And if we have things to add, we move on. So let's just try to keep it going nicely and quickly if possible, okay? And if we need a break, there's some food there, there's coffee, there's water, there's, people can get up and help themselves, right? Okay, all right. So how about we start with Jim, section 14.
Okay. Throughout our study of the various books of the Ruby Institute, we've tried not to lose sight of the profound connections that bind doing and being, and occupying one another and accompanying one another as we learn together in action. We must pay constant attention to both of these dimensions of any act of service. What one does and how a given action is carried out matter. Good planning and skillful implementation are clearly necessary. But we know well that the effectiveness of service is also contingent on what may be called the qualities of action. Thus, as we walk the path of service together, we must be ever aware that action must be imbued with love. Action must be pure, both the motive and the deeds themselves. To act requires courage. One must strive to act in a state of detachment, and little is ever achieved without perseverance. These and many other qualities of action have often been the object of our deliberations. The excerpt below from a message of the Universal House of Justice to a youth conference is only one among the many passages that inspire us to strive to adorn our actions with these qualities. Can we go ahead? Or?
Sure, carry on.
This is the quote. Universal House of Justice, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Be not dismayed if your endeavors are dismissed as utopian by the voices that would oppose any suggestion of fundamental change. Trust in the capacity of this generation to disentangle itself from the embroilments of a divided society. To discharge your responsibilities, you will have to show forth courage, the courage of those who cling to standards of rectitude, whose lives are characterized by purity of thought and action, and whose purpose is directed by love and indomitable faith. As you dedicate yourselves to healing the wounds with which your peoples have been afflicted, you will become invincible champions of justice.
Okay, are there any terms in there that people need clarification about? Utopian or indomitable or rectitude? Everything's kind of real clear? Okay, all right. Mariella, do you want to read?
I try.
Okay.
In this section, we will seek new insights from a number of passages that have a bearing on our present discussion. In the Sermons of the Lord of Hosts, we read,
This is Baha'u'llah's words, Sermon of the Lord of Hosts.
O feet of this temple, we, verily, have brought you of iron. Stand firm with such constancy in the cause of your Lord, as to cause the feet of every severed soul to be strengthened in the path of God, the Almighty, the All-Wise, reward lest the store of enmity and hatred, or the blast of the worker of iniquity, cause you to stumble. Be immovable in the fight of God. And our note, we verily have called you for by virtue of that name, which is the source of all steadfastness, and be the grace of each one of our most excellent names, as revealed unto all who are in heaven and on earth. Ere alone shall we bring into being through to other feet, firm and steadfast, which shall walk unwavering, sorry.
It's okay.
You're doing great.
In our path, even shall they be assailed by hosts as formidable as the combined forces of the former and later generations.
So that passage was probably about steadfastness, right? And so if you want to read that sentence at the top, Mariella?
Reflect in your group on how steadfastness may manifest itself when we accompany each other on the path of service.
So I'll ask Mariella if she has something to add to that. If anybody has something to add, this would be the time after Mariella. So what would steadfastness look like when we are accompanying each other?
Steadfast. It's like to hold strong.
I'm thinking is that keep the truth and detachment about the other actions,
Mm-hmm.
keep the faith.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the word in English.
Say it in Spanish.
Es, mantenerse firmes.
Oh, be firm. Maintain
Yeah,
firmness.
Firm.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's say Mariella, what would it look like when you accompanied me when we went to serve at the what would steadfastness look like when we went to the Sylvania Area Family Services to teach virtues class? So let's say when we got there was only one student. What would steadfastness look like?
We keep the faith, detachment.
That's right. We'd do it anyway.
Yes.
We'll do our lesson, even for one student. Okay, carrying on. Sean.
One day the great Syed Yah, surnamed Vahid, was present there. As he sat without Tahire, listened to him from behind the veil. I was then a child and was sitting on her lap. With the eloquence of favor, Vahid, is that correct?
Vahid.
Vahid was discoursing on the signs and the verses that bore witness to the advent of the new manifestation. She suddenly interrupted him and, raising her voice vehemently, declared, "Oh, Yahai,
Yeah.
Yahya, let deeds, not words, testify to the faith. If thou art a man of true learning, cease idly repeating the traditions of the past for the day of service, for the steadfast action is come. Now in the time to show forth the true signs of God, to rend asunder the veils of idol, fancy, to promote the word of God and to sacrifice ourselves in his path, let deeds, not words, be our adorning."
Okay.
What should we be ready to sacrifice when we set out to assist a friend on the path of service?
So what do you think?
Well, we're all, kind of like in the same boat. The only thing I would say is that you're just sacrificing one's time.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to dedicate yourself to help someone.
Sure. Did you have something you wanted to add, Mary Ellen?
Sometimes we have sacrifice with owner desires,
Uh-huh.
owner needs too.
That's true. That's true. Anybody else have anything to add?
There were two references regarding deeds, not words.
That's right.
Mm.
So it's behavior rather than belief.
Absolutely. This is going back to how they started this section with remember the doing and the being, right? And this is the theme that's going through all of this is the doing, right?
I think that's probably a critical factor in the followers of any religion. How do you embody the principles of the religion you follow? How does that manifest itself to your community?
Well, Tahireh told Vahid that go and sacrifice everything, and he did. He gave his life. So, sacrifice everything, right? All right. I'll read the next part. Baha'u'llah explains, so that was from Abdu'l-Baha, that quote was from Memorials of the Faithful, that was Abdu'l-Baha talking about that story. This is Baha'u'llah. Through the power of the words he hath uttered, the whole of the human race can be illumined with the light of unity, and the remembrance of his name is able to set afire the hearts of all men and burn away the veils that intervene between them and his glory. One righteous act is endowed with a potency that can so elevate the dust as to cause it to pass beyond heaven, the heaven of heavens. It can tear every bond asunder and hath the power to restore the force that has spent itself and vanished. Wow. So we should say a few words about what constitutes a righteous act. How can it be spoiled by self-righteousness? How can you give an example of a righteous act that restores a force that has spent itself? So that's a multi-pronged question, okay? So I would say that a righteous act is a pure act, given purity of heart, a righteous act. I would say, how can it be spoiled by self-righteousness? Well, a righteous act could be spoiled by self-righteousness if you boast about doing that pure-hearted act, right? If there's a boasting and wanting to get some some special favors or at, you know, recognition, that's the word.
Returns.
Yes, yes. But the last part is the hard part, right? Is the hard. Can you give an example of a righteous act restoring a force that has spent itself? Okay, so somebody maybe who has lost hope, the force of hope has been lost, so that force has spent itself, right? And so maybe a simple act of kindness, a righteous, pure-hearted act of kindness, can help restore that hope, right? That's what I've come up with. Does anybody have something else?
I got much more concrete.
Okay.
It was when I was teaching a Getting Ahead program for 15 ex-criminals that were released from the Stryker facility. And they went through this 12-step Getting Ahead program. And they went in as criminals, ex-cons, and they came out transformed.
Mm-hmm.
And the transformation had to be, number one, a part of the program, but also part of the virtues that were exchanged between the participants and the adoption of those virtues in their conduct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Definitely. Great example. You don't want to read, right? Marlene, would you read the next? If a simple act.
Is a simple?
If a simple act, yeah.
Is a simple act can be done with such occasion. How much power we may have on self can we replace through sustained, focused plan or action that define the path of service which we are concerned in this unit.
Carry on. Keep reading. Please.
So one cannot obtain the full forces of the sunlight when it is cast on a flat mirror. But once the sun shines upon a constant mirror, or on a lens that is convex, or is carefully concentrated on a single point, and the one point will burn the contrast. Thus, it is necessary to focus one's thinking on a single point so that it will become an effective force. In its goodbye, one message, the University House of Research said, sustaining growth in Clutter after Clutter will depend on the qualities that distinguish your service to the people of the world. So free must be your thought and action of any trial of producer, racial, religious, economic, national, tribal, class, or cultural, that even the stranger see in the living friends. So high must be your standard of excellence, and so poor and change that you reach that the moral influence you exerted penetrates the consciousness of the one-winder community. Only is to demonstrate the rectitude of conduct to which the witness of the fact call every soul will be able to struggle against to Marion or of corruption over and subject, each of the people of society. Only is you present honor and knowledge in every human being to is independent of wealth or poverty. Will you be able to champion the cause of justice? The above passage mentions some of the requirements of the spiritual excellence, power, which all our actions should aspire. Discuss in the group with perception, honor, and nobility in every human being is essential. This accompanying one another on the path of service is to be aware with the elemental in the duty of the community.
Do you have any thoughts about that, Marlena? So, why is perceiving honor and nobility in every human being essential if we are to accompany each other on this path of service? Explain it in Spanish. At least Mariela will understand.
She'll translate.
And she can translate for us.
Mariela, ¿tú entiendes?
Esta parte no la has entendido.
O sea,
Digo, o sea, está hablando que para el camino de acompañamiento debes demostrar unas ciertas cualidades, como es la excelencia, el no prejuicio, no mirar a las personas por lo que tengan y su diferencia de piel, sino manteniendo una actitud recta, pero que a las personas hay que verlas por su nobleza y por su honor y nobleza, independientemente de su riqueza o pobreza.
¿y cuál es la pregunta?
La pregunta te dice que acerca de este pasaje, que menciones algunos de los requerimientos para llegar a la excelencia espiritual. Entonces, por ejemplo, claro, la nobleza, que también te pide que expliques cómo podrías aplicar la nobleza y el honor en el camino de acompañamiento de servicio en la comunidad. O sea, son casi dos preguntas en una, ¿no?
Humildad, ¿cómo se siente en inglés?
Humble,
Humildad.
humble,
Humble. Humility or,
Yeah.
or humbleness.
Humbleness,
Ajá.
possible
sí, también habla de que tus acciones deben de estar distinguidas por el no prejuicio, ¿no? Sí. O sea, eso te hace noble, que tu carácter sea recto. I explain.
Thank you. Thank you for explaining. It's all right. It's all right. Thank you. So does anybody have any thoughts about that one? Why is it perceiving honor and nobility in every human being essential if we are to advance in our communities?
If you see somebody and you put them down by not seeing them like this, it creates a barrier there, and you can't get past that barrier until you change your ways. It's just not going to work.
And so,
Everybody has to be respected. Everybody has to be honored.
One thing we read it before in the beginning, talking about the doing and being.
mhm,
So I guess the character, the honor and nobility has the doing and being,
mhm.
but it's always with the qualities, detachment, no just the people, no produce, no for the action. We only accompany, but keep the vision and the God, what the God will. I guess I tried to
That's good.
God's will,
That's good.
yeah.
I think
That's
Jim
right.
had something also to say.
Well, it just occurred to me that we talk about leveling the playing field, okay? In this case, we're going to remove those barriers of prejudice when we're talking to someone. If you're really going to reach them, it's a recognition that every body, every person is a gift of God, and you recognize the God-given spirit in that person, using the mirror to focus in on that to remove those barriers, and then it'll lead you the way to say the right words, to be on an even level with them.
Anybody
I
have
like
anything else? That's good. So, Chrissy.
The Universal House of Justice writes in a message addressed to the Baha'i youth, the words, the deeds, the attitudes, the lack of prejudice, the nobility of character, the high sense of service to others, in a word, those qualities and actions which distinguish a Baha'i must unfailingly characterize their inner life and outer behavior and their interactions with friend or foe. Rejecting the low sights of mediocrity, let them scale the ascending heights of excellence in all they aspire to do. May they resolve to elevate the very atmosphere in which they move, whether it be in the schoolrooms or halls by higher learning, in their work, their recreation, their Baha'i activity, or social service. In reflecting on the theme of excellence, you will find it helpful to give some thought to the nature of mediocrity. In the context of accompanying one another, avoiding mediocrity cannot mean demanding perfection from ourselves and others, ignoring that our actions become more and more effective with accumulating experience. Spiritual excellence does not admit rigidity. What does it mean then to reject mediocrity and walking the path of service in the company of others?
It's attitude. Your attitude don't want to, don't want to be rigid, right?
So,
When
yeah,
they're trying to, you don't want to go in and try to service and just be so strong about it.
in other words, reject any obstacles that come in your path and be inflexible. You don't want to be inflexible. That's what you're saying.
Right.
Yeah. Yes.
I think being a Baha'i, the bar is set pretty high for us as far as righteousness and quality of life and the way we perform. And we're told to live our life, be a Baha'i. We hear that a lot. Well, mediocrity sets the bar lower than that bar. And you've always got to think about your actions as it appears to others. You may not feel it, but because we're in a minority, wherever we go, and if they know it, they're going to watch us to see what we do and how we talk and how we talk about other people. I mean, I think we need to keep in mind just how high that bar is and try to reflect that in our everyday living. I think it's important to us not just to show them, but then to improve ourselves as we meet others.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts?
I was thinking mediocrity is a product of self-interest. And if my attitude for service is going to be filled with self-interest, I would want to do as little as possible. Make it be so-so, or it's okay, and not to the best of my ability. If I were to flip that, get it away from self-interest, and put it into literally the interest of another person, then mediocrity is thrown out and excellence starts to come in. And of course it gets back down to the golden rule that exists in every religion. Will do unto others as you would have done to you.
Anything else to add?
Mm,
Yes, Miriam.
I was thinking when we're searching for the excellence. So when we not put all this force looking for the excellence, we are mediocre.
If we don't look for excellence,
Right.
yes. That's right. So, did you have something?
No.
Anything else?
In a prayer revealed for the occasion of Nowruz, we acknowledge.
How appropriate.
Oh, I thought I pronounced something wrong. Okay. Thou art he through whom the ensign, praiseworthy art thou in thy words, hath been lifted up, and the standard, obey art thou in thy behest, hath been unfurled. Make known this thy station, O my God, unto thy servants, that they may be made aware of that the excellence of all things is dependent upon thy bidding and thy word, and the virtue of every act is conditioned by thy leave and the good pleasure of thy will, and may recognize that the reins of men's doings are within the grasp of thine acceptance and thy commandment. We end this section by asking you to meditate on the profound truth that action receives its real meaning and value from the good pleasure of God's will. Acts of service spring from the love of God and the desire to obey His commandments. Reflection on this truth helps us to appreciate that an act, however infinitesimal, is, when viewed in a mirror of the knowledge of God, greater than a mountain. Every drop proffered in His path is as the sea in that mirror.
Wow, that is beautiful. So we're going to move